Hello, everybody. This is Kiran Gange. I'm here with another show of the Retail Price Talk podcast. With me, I have Sarah Xhauflaire, who's an old friend of mine. We've been together for about 25 years together in the retail pricing industry. Sarah has experience all the way from the Silicon Valley startups to consulting companies such as PwC and Deloitte. She's also worked directly with large retailers like Ahold and Delhaize. She has experience mainly in Europe and also North America. With me, Sarah is joining us from Belgium. Sarah, welcome to the show and please introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Kiran. Yeah, so as Kiran said, I've been working in the retail industry for more than 20 years. Holding, as Kiran said, being working directly for retailers, for software companies, for consulting companies. So I've seen retail from different angles. And indeed, I've been very focused on pricing in the start of the years 2000. But lately, I've shifted also more into customer engagement. And in fact, yeah, pricing and customer engagement nowadays also become more intricate or working together. You cannot anymore work in silos and just think about pricing or think about customer engagement. And I think this is a bit the topic of today also, or everything becomes more collaborative within the different departments of retailers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you have had this experience of working with technology teams, with consulting teams, with retail teams, and you've seen, and also as a consumer, right? You stayed in different parts of the world. You've seen how the industry has changed. So now, just to take it back a little bit, maybe you can talk about how things were before the pandemic, Sarah. What do you see in the industry?
Yeah. So maybe just to precise, I've worked for different type of retailers, but mainly in grocery retail. So I would say most of the things I would say apply mainly to grocery retail because, of course, fashion or electronics is also something quite different. But so for grocery retail, I think indeed before the pandemic, there was still always a lot of pressure on prices. We could see in many areas in the world, in Europe, but also outside of Europe, really a lot of the discounters taking more and more share of the market. And there, indeed, it was important for a lot of retailers to be well equipped in terms of technology to manage their prices and be always very focused there. But the pandemic indeed changed a lot, that especially in grocery retail, and that has brought a lot of disruption, I think. What we've seen indeed when the pandemic came, pressure on price was minimum. We even saw, and for example, in Belgium, a lot of retailers even started stopping doing promotions because, yeah, then it was just, giving the minimum to people to be able to eat at home. There was a huge focus on e-commerce because people could not go a lot outside of their homes. So that was really an acceleration of e-commerce as well. And as people were not spending money anymore going out of home for, getting food outside of home, going to the restaurant, etc., what they started spending more on groceries as well, because then they started preparing a nice meals at home. And so price did not matter so much. What they wanted was convenience, pleasure, emotions. And so, yeah, that really changed the game. And in that period, we saw a shift again from retailers offering all of these nice services, e-commerce, convenience, nice food, etc., taking again market share versus discounters. So that was for me a big change in the game, and also, yeah, an acceleration of e-commerce for the ones that were not doing it yet. So that has really brought a lot of change, certainly in the grocery industry.
Yeah. Just a quick side question there. You've seen the industry in the US. You also seen industry in Europe. How did this compare? Like between then and now, Sarah. Do you see any changes in these two industries?
Well, obviously, there is something, and certainly in a country like the one I live in, Belgium. where there is something that is so fundamentally different is the distance to a store. And I think that has an impact on certain things that maybe work in the US and may not work or appeal so much in Europe. Like, for example, during pandemic, there was this surge of rapid delivery, right? And I know you on one of your previous podcasts, Kiran, you talk about it as well in India. But this is something, for example, in Europe that came during the pandemic as well, but it's dying because you have so many stores so close to you. Like, if you look in Belgium, it's crazy, right? The number of stores you have per square kilometer.
Right.
That those kind of services, then yeah, maybe during a pandemic it works because people don't want to go out.
Right.
But once people go out again, it's not applicable. So there are, I think, differences between the US and Europe, also maybe because of the concentration of stores. Like, for example, in Europe, you see really the hypermarket concept is really dying. There's been such a focus on convenience stores, and yeah, definitely the pandemic has helped as well. So, while I think in the US, yeah, maybe there is also convenience, but you still have those huge formats, that work well. So there are some differences, maybe due to the distances as well. Uh, yeah,
I think
that's some,
you nailed it on the head. On one aspect, there is the size of the stores and how convenient is it for people to, like walk to a store versus drive and do all the weekend shopping at once. Just to go back to what's happening in India now, you could place an order in a train station and it'll arrive before the train arrives at the next station, and it only stops for 2 minutes, but you'll pick up a delivery for next to no charge. It's just a combination of the labor costs and technology and all of these dynamics. It's very, very interesting indeed. So now we're done with the pandemic, and then it did all of the situation to go back to pre-pandemic, and how did it change, Sarah?
yeah, well, yes and no. So people kept a bit some of their habits. So yeah, they like the convenience, they like those additional new services, etc. So they still want to continue. So e-commerce, for example, went down again, but still is at a level higher than pre-pandemic. So definitely that there's been more attraction to e-commerce. Although one of the issues today in Europe, I mean, talking about the scale of things, etc., there are not many retailers that are profitable with e-commerce yet. It's still very costly. Labor costs in Europe are awful. So it is still a challenge to make e-commerce profitable for a lot of companies. But still, e-commerce is still there, higher than pre-pandemic. But then where then everything was again the problem was the war, right? The war in Ukraine and everything. And so suddenly huge inflation and back again a lot of attention on prices.
Right.
Except that what makes it difficult for retailers is that, well, there is a big attention on prices, but they realize they cannot increase the price or reflect 100% of the cost increase towards the customers.
Right.
So we've also seen again, tough negotiations, and we still see in Europe tough negotiation between retailers and manufacturers where you sometimes have empty shelves in the stores because they don't get a deal with the manufacturers. They say, I stop buying your product. So negotiations with manufacturers remain tough, but they realize that, of course, they cannot continue passing all of these increases due to inflation. So the pressure on margin is even higher, especially as at the same time with pandemic, customers got used to all this convenience and these nice services,
All right.
and also e-commerce, which is still costly. And so I think what we see now in Europe and probably the same in the US is then retailers try to find alternative ways to do revenue and get margin. And so there's been really a lot of focus on retail media, for example. So a lot of companies are investing in technology to facilitate retail media. I mean, retailers have always done retail media in a way. I mean, in the store, on your cart, whatever you sell, to P&G, an advert, and they put an advert on the washing powder or whatever. But now it's all about online retail media.
Okay.
And so in Europe, at least, there's been quite a focus now to make sure that the data that they collect about the customer is usable and that they can use that to target audiences that they sell, for retail media. So that's been a way to compensate for this pressure on margin, that they realize that there is no way that they can compensate for it.
Yeah.
And then lastly, also what we've seen lately again, especially in the last maybe 12 months in Europe and in Belgium as well, is again huge investment into loyalty programs. Uh, because everybody wants to fight to keep their customers. And as they cannot really just play on price just on the base price of the product for affordability, they try to find other ways to compensate and make it attract the customer. And so we've seen new models arrive in terms of loyalty programs where some retailers, like in France, Carrefour, in the Netherlands, Albertijn, they started to do subscriptions, memberships, while loyalty programs have always been free. You start to see programs where they do combinations, like Carrefour in France. They offering a premium membership program that customer pay, and then with it they get Netflix for free or Spotify or things like that. So they try to diversify a bit, and in a way try to find a way to make things affordable to the customer, but not just by working on base price.
Okay.
So I would say this has been some of the trends, I would say, that we've seen lately in Europe.
Okay, that makes sense. So one is there is a high pressure to bring the cost down, and there is all of this clash between the manufacturers and retailers. What about these changing tariffs? That also contributes to highly dynamic prices. How are retailers managing this, Sarah?
Well, I would say it's funny because today I read I read an article actually last night about the fact that Walmart is going to increase its prices because of tariffs. It's funny because in Europe right now everybody talks about the tariffs and how bad it's going to be, but nobody has mentioned yet what will be the impact on retail, right? Um, because I think, in a way, you know, most of the retail brands in Europe that comes from the US, they are manufactured anyway here in Europe, right? So I think I don't know if it will have such an impact on retail, to be honest with you. And it's funny also because the other day, a friend of mine, she texts me and say, "Look what I've seen in a store. There was a store that was advertising product coming from America." And like those products that you don't usually see in Europe. And she said, this is such a bad idea, right? Because now there is this tendency of, don't buy American, right? Because of the tariffs and everything. But I'm not sure this is going to have such an impact. But of course, in retail in Europe, I think most of the retailers now, the big ones, they are equipped with good technology, most of them, to manage pricing and promotions. But there again, also, I think the thing to compensate for the fact that they cannot constantly increase in price, it's managing assortment,
Right, right.
where this is a bit more maybe complex to manage. And you've seen, for example, Deleuze. So as you mentioned, I've worked quite a lot for the Deleuze group, our whole Deleuze group. Deleuze in Belgium, they have an image of, they definitely not the cheapest, but they want to offer quality, healthy product, etc. But still, when there was this focus on pricing because of the inflation, instead of decreasing their prices, they started doing a campaign about their base product. Their private label, which is the cheapest, and they started doing a campaign about what they call petit lion, small lions,
Okay.
and so instead of decreasing prices, they just make a focus on, we also have affordable product for you. We have a range of cheap products, and so I think this is also something that retailers have to be creative about. It's not just about decreasing prices. You can also introduce or put more focus on some products that are more affordable for your customers.
I think that's a very good idea. People who have sensitivity towards prices, they identify the private label where you can make more margin. So you drive the traffic through there, and then you can still maintain a healthy margin to stay alive in the rest of the assortment. That's fantastic. I think going back to what you were saying about increasing additional revenue streams, that's very interesting, Sarah. It's not just about selling the product. The people are already there in your store. That is real estate you're carrying, and also the all of the data you collected over the years, right? Whether it's customer loyalty or OS or even store traffic, demographics, how people are browsing online, that is a wealth of data, right? So are there any retailers who are capitalizing on this already, or what do you think the opportunity could be?
Oh yeah, I mean, in Europe, well, Carrefour, for example, I think was last year or already the year before, they announced a joint venture with Publicis. So they've really created a separate company. Deleuze has already also been investing a lot in having a real media company within the group. I mean, in their annual report, they mention each year how much revenue they start making on this. So the big ones, I would say certainly the big ones are doing, but sometimes you even hear it. I was talking to some technology company who's offering technology to exchange data. And even small s- specialty retailers start to do retail media. Like there is a chain in Belgium, which is growing in Europe as well, a Medimarket offering, parapharmacy, like, these pharmaceutical products, but also the creams and all of these beauty products at affordable prices. And even this type of specialty chain, they started to invest in some technology to do retail media. So it's not just the big players. I mean, I think indeed, and some of the big players and the big names, and certainly the Carrefour in France, they've already invested a lot, but then they've combined their strengths with some company that for whom it's a business, because that's a challenge too. It's a totally different business. Selling advertisement is not the same as selling a pot of chocolate, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so it's really a totally new business. They need to acquire new skills, new technology to do so. But I think, yeah, some of the big names have started to do it, and they have big objectives.
Fascinating indeed. Now all of this brings about like a new situation right now going forward, right? There is all these new data sources, new revenue streams. What do you think retailers can do to prepare forward for this, Sarah? What do you suggest would be recommendations? With only in our audience, we have pricing analysts, category managers, we have retail executives. What do you suggest they could be doing to be prepared for the future?
Well, for me, they really need to change their ways of working because, I've seen in many retailers, they work so much like in every company, in most companies, they work so much in silos, right?
Yeah.
But I think you cannot work in silo anymore. It's not like you work on price or you work on your customer experience in the store, or no, everything is connected. So whatever you do, all your big because yeah, we've not even talked about AI, right? Which is a totally different subject. But so they really have, I think, to have cross-functional teams to make sure that when they launch some innovative initiatives, it's all connected. They need to work together because it's not anymore just in silo. You cannot work anymore in silo. You're not going to be successful if you do that. So For me, that's one thing. And more than ever, I think, because the consumer are more and more educated, they can find a lot of information. I think retailers that want to be successful, they have to come with a very clear story. They need to have a very clear positioning. For example, Carrefour in Belgium has been suffering so much because they don't have a clear positioning in the market. They're kind of in between, right? And so I think this is dangerous. You really have to be clear on what you want to do for your customers. And because indeed there are so many possibilities now, right? Should I focus on convenience? Should I focus on price? Should I, but it's important that you take a stake, right? That you take a position. Where are you going? And that you have a compelling offering for the customers if you want to be successful and not change all the time. I would say this would be, and be alert indeed, huh? Always listening to what's coming up. Innovation is key. And definitely you mentioned data. Yeah, they have a gold mine. I mean, grocery retailers, they really sit on a gold mine. But of course, data protection in Europe is huge. I mean, we've introduced GDPR quite some time ago. So being sure that, of course, all your systems, your technology is secured, well protected. I mean, because that could damage very well the reputation, of course, of a retailer. So they have a lot, but they have to keep it very well secured.
Agree, agree, agree. And we need to mine the gold, but make sure it doesn't fall on you, right? So very, very insightful, Sarah. This has been brilliant. I really enjoyed the conversations. If I think you should definitely write a book, and then people would really enjoy it. Let's learn together. But if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do you prefer this is done, Sarah?
They can contact me via LinkedIn, or we can share my email address, whatever, to,
Definitely.
to connect with the retail world.
Absolutely. I will put both your LinkedIn ID and your email ID. If any of our listeners are interested to connect with Sarah, please do so. So again, this is Kiran Gange, CEO of RapidPricer. You're listening to the Retail Price Talk. You can always follow the podcast on Spotify or other mediums you use for your podcast. And we're also available on www.rapidpricer.com. So thank you very much, Sarah, for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.